This is not just any tale. It is a tale of greed, of power, of blood. A tale whispered by the winds, carried by the spirits, and written in the fate of those who dare to defy the unknown. Sit close, open your ears, and let me tell you about the woman named Ngozi. In the heart of Lagos, where wealth and power flow like fine wine, there lived a woman whose name commanded respect, Ngozi Okudili, a vision of success. She was the kind of woman who walked into a room and made time slow down. Her skin, rich as the earth, glowed under designer fabrics. Her laughter, though rare, was like the chiming of gold coins. Every word she spoke dripped with confidence, and her every step echoed power. But even the wealthiest hands cannot escape fate, and some riches come at a cost too steep to pay. It began on an afternoon like no other. The sun battered Victoria Island in golden hues as Ngozi stepped out of her black Mercedes, her designer heels clicking against the polished floors of Echefula Jewels, Lagos's most exclusive boutique. This wasn't just a store, it was a kingdom of luxury where only the elite dared to shop. Ngozi had come for something unique, something irreplaceable. As she browsed through rows of glittering treasures, her eyes fell on a crimson bead necklace. Unlike the rest, this piece didn't just shimmer, it seemed to pulse, as if alive. The deep red beads, smooth and polished, almost looked like droplets of solidified blood. A frail elderly woman behind the counter watched Ngozi intently. Her eyes, dark as a moonless night, seemed to carry a warning. You have a fine eye, madam, the woman said, her voice barely above a whisper. Ngozi smirked, lifting the necklace. I always do. A strange hush settled over the boutique. The air thickened. The chandelier lights dimmed just slightly. That necklace, the woman murmured, comes with a history. Ngozi arched a perfectly shaped brow. And the woman hesitated, then leaned in, voice even lower. It once belonged to a girl, a maiden sacrificed to the gods. They say her spirit lingers within, watching, waiting. Ngozi chuckled. You tell stories like my grandmother. How much? The old woman's gaze didn't waver. Madam, some things are not meant to be owned. Ngozi rolled her eyes. Everything has a price. And so she bought it, without hesitation, without fear. If only she had known. That night, the rain drummed against the windows of Ngozi's lavish mansion in Ikoyi. In her marble bathroom, she admired the necklace in the mirror, running her fingers over the cool beads. Then, something changed. Her reflection lagged for a split second. She frowned, adjusted the necklace. The mirror fogged up, despite there being no stain. And then, from the mist, a whisper slithered into her ears. Ngozi. Her breath hitched. She spun around, but there was no one there. A chill crawled down her spine. She shook her head. She was imagining things, or so she thought. The nightmares began immediately. She dreamed of a dense forest under a full moon. A young girl, no older than 19, knelt before an altar, wrists bound, tears streaking her cheeks. The same crimson necklace gleamed at her throat. Shadowy figures loomed over her, chanting in an ancient tongue. Then a blade flashed. Ngozi woke up gasping. Cold sweat drenched her silk sheets. The whisper still echoed in her ears. Ngozi, return it or suffer. She sat up, gripping her temples. It was just a dream. It had to be. But then she noticed something. Her bedroom mirror was fogged up, and scrawled across the glass was a word blood. Ngozi's heart pounded. She didn't know why it was written there. And yet, somehow, she knew. The days blurred into nights, and the disturbances worsened. Mirrors reflected figures that weren't there. The air in her mansion grew thick with unseen eyes. Objects shifted on their own. The once warm halls of her home turned cold, hollow, haunted. One evening, as she poured herself a glass of wine, she heard it again. Ngozi! The voice came from inside the house. Ngozi's grip tightened on the glass. Who is there? Silence. Then a shadow moved in the reflection of the wine bottle. Her blood ran cold. Slowly she turned, and there, standing at the end of the hallway, was a girl. She was pale, fragile, draped in a white wrapper. Beads identical to Ngozi's hung at her throat. Her dark eyes were sunken, tear-streaked, full of sorrow. It was her, the girl from the dream. Ngozi's voice caught in her throat. Who are you? The girl's lips trembled, but no words came. Ngozi stumbled backward. The wine glass slipped from her fingers, shattering against the marble floor. The ghostly maiden took a step forward. The house groaned. The walls seemed to close in. Ngozi ran. She didn't stop running until she locked herself in her bedroom, heart pounding. But when she turned to the mirror, the girl was already there, staring back at her. The next morning, Ngozi visited the priestess, an old woman who knew the ways of the ancestors. The priestess took one look at the necklace and went rigid. You should not have taken this, she said. Ngozi crossed her arms. And why not? The priestess traced the beads with wrinkled fingers. It is cursed. The spirit of the girl was sacrificed for wealth long ago. Now she follows whoever wears her beads. Ngozi scoffed. Spirit or not, I'm not giving up my luck. The priestess's face darkened. Then be ready, Ngozi Okudele, for soon she will not just hunt, she will demand blood. That night, Ngozi locked her bedroom doors. She would not be afraid. But fear does not need permission to creep in. The moment she laid down, the shadows moved. The air grew dense. A weight pressed down on her chest. And then, ice-cold fingers wrapped around her throat. Her eyes flew open. The ghostly maiden hovered over her face twisted in rage and sorrow. You wear my necklace, but refuse my pain? Her voice shook the walls. You take my wealth, but reject my suffering? Ngozi struggled to breathe. The crimson beast burned against her skin. The whispers grew into screams, and then darkness. Ngozi awoke on the floor, gasping for air. The necklace lay beside her, still glowing. The room was still, but she knew the ghostly maiden was not finished. And the true horror was yet to begin. Ngozi sat in her lavish living room, bathed in the golden glow of a chandelier. The air smelled of imported roses, the scent of wealth and power. The city of Lagos hummed outside her estate, oblivious to the torment brewing within its walls. She had convinced herself that the nightmares, the whispers, the strange occurrences were all figments of stress, nothing more. She had built her empire on resilience. Her business was booming, her influence unmatched. The world saw a woman at the pinnacle of success, a queen draped in silk and gold. But beneath the surface, the shadows were creeping closer. It began softly. The maids whispered of strange footprints in the corridors. The mirrors in the house fogged over on their own, no matter how many times they were cleaned. And then there were the voices. Ngozi, soft, lingering, always from just beyond her vision. She dismissed it all, a trick of the mind. But when she attended a high-profile gala, something happened that she could not ignore. Dressed in a custom-made emerald green gown, she glowed under the flashing cameras. She was the moment, the envy of the room. Yet, as she greeted dignitaries and socialites, a chilling sensation crawled up her spine. Then she saw her, the ghostly maiden. She stood among the guests, unnoticed by anyone else. Pale brown skin, hollow eyes, tear-streaked cheeks, the faded white wrapper draped over her frail form. Her translucent fingers clutched an identical crimson necklace around her throat. Ngozi's breath caught. She blinked and the figure was gone. But something icy trailed down her neck. A whisper slithered into her ear. "You owe me." Ngozi staggered back, knocking over a waiter's tray. The hall went silent. All eyes turned to her. She straightened quickly, forcing a dazzling smile. "Ah, clumsy me." Laughter followed. The moment passed. The world still saw their powerful, untouchable queen. But she knew the truth. The curse was tightening around her throat. And it would not let go. Days turned into weeks, and Ngozi's life became a delicate balancing act between maintaining her public persona and suppressing the growing dread that gnawed at her sanity. She buried herself in work, attending meetings, signing deals, and hosting lavish parties, all in an effort to drown out the whispers and shadows that haunted her. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long, eerie shadows across her opulent mansion, Ngozi sat in her study, poring over financial reports. The numbers blurred before her eyes, and a throbbing headache settled in. She reached for the glass of water on her desk, but as she lifted it to her lips, a chilling sensation washed over her. From the corner of her eye, she noticed a figure standing in the doorway. Her heart raced, but she forced herself to remain calm. "It's just stress," she muttered under her breath. "You're imagining things." But the figure remained. Slowly, she turned her head to face it. There stood the ghostly maiden, her hollow eyes filled with sorrow. Her tear-streaked cheeks glistened in the dim light. She wore the same faded white wrapper and the crimson bead necklace that mirrored Ngozi's own. Ngozi's breath caught in her throat. "What do you want?" she demanded, her voice trembling, despite her attempt to sound authoritative. The ghostly maiden's lips parted, but no sound emerged. Instead, a cold breeze swept through the room, carrying with it the faint scent of earth and decay. The lights flickered, and the shadows on the wall seemed to dance menacingly. "Leave me alone!" Ngozi shouted, slamming her fist on the desk. The apparition remained, his sorrowful gaze piercing through her. In a desperate attempt to reclaim control, Ngozi grabbed her phone and dialed her personal assistant. "Get me Dr. Kafo," she ordered. "I need a psychological evaluation immediately." As she ended the call, the room fell silent. The ghostly maiden had vanished, leaving Ngozi alone with her racing thoughts and the oppressive weight of dread. Dr. Kafo was a renowned psychologist, known for his pragmatic approach and skepticism of the supernatural. He arrived at Ngozi's mansion the following morning, his demeanor calm and professional. "Ngozi, it's good to see you," he greeted, extending a hand. She forced a smile. "Thank you for coming on such short notice, doctor." They settled in the study, where the previous night's encounter still lingered in Ngozi's mind. He recounted the events, omitting the more supernatural elements, and focused on her feelings of stress and anxiety. Dr. Kafo listened intently, nodding occasionally. It's not uncommon for individuals under significant stress to experience hallucinations or vivid dreams, he explained. The mind can play tricks on us, especially when we are overworked. Ngozi clung to his words, desperate for a rational explanation. "So you think it's all in my head?" "Most likely," he replied. "I recommend taking some time off, perhaps a vacation. Disconnect from work and allow your mind to rest." She nodded, though the idea of leaving her empire unattended filled her with unease. "I'll consider it." As Dr. Kafo left, Ngozi felt a fleeting sense of relief. A logical explanation provided a temporary balm to her frayed nerves. Yet, deep down, a nagging doubt remained. Determined to prove to herself and others that she was in control, Ngozi decided to host a grand soiree at her mansion. The event would be the talk of Lagos, a testament to her unshakable status. The night of the party arrived, and the mansion was adorned with the finest decorations money could buy. Guests in elegant attire filled the halls, laughter and music echoing through the expensive rooms. Ngozi moved through the crowd, her smile radiant, engaging in light conversation and accepting compliments with grace. Yet, beneath the surface, she remained vigilant, watching for any sign of the ghostly maiden. As the evening progressed, she found herself alone in the grand ballroom. The guests, having moved to the terrace for a fireworks display, the chandeliers above cast a warm glow, and the polished marble floors reflected the opulence of the space. A soft melody began to play from the grand piano in the corner of the room. Ngozi frowned, knowing that no pianist had been hired for the evening. She approached the piano cautiously, her heels clicking against the marble. Seated at the piano was the ghostly maiden, her fingers dancing gracefully over the keys, producing a hauntingly beautiful tune. Her hollow eyes met Ngozi's, and a tear rolled down her cheek. "Why are you doing this?" Ngozi whispered, her voice trembling. The ghostly maiden continued to play, her expression sorrowful. The room grew colder, and the lights dimmed, casting long shadows that seemed to reach out toward Ngozi. In a surge of defiance, Ngozi reached out to touch the apparition, determined to prove it was a figment of her imagination. Her hand passed through the ghostly maiden, encountering only a chilling void. A whisper filled the air, barely audible, yet unmistakable. "Remember." Ngozi stumbled back, her heart pounding. The music ceased and the ghostly maiden vanished, leaving the room in an eerie silence. The sound of applause from the terrace broke the spell, and Ngozi forced herself to rejoin her guests, her facade firmly in place, but the encounter had shaken her to her core. Unable to dismiss the latest encounter as mere stress, Ngozi delved into the history of the crimson bead necklace she wore. She consulted historians, visited libraries, and scoured archives, seeking any information that could explain the apparition. Her research led her to an old folk tale about a young Igbo maiden named Amara, who had been wronged and betrayed, her spirit unable to find peace. According to the legend, Amara's sorrow was bound to a crimson bead necklace, and those who possessed it would be haunted by her until justice was served. Ngozi's blood ran cold. The necklace she had acquired at a boutique some time ago, the one she wore as a symbol of her success, matched the description perfect. Doubt gnawed at her. Would the ghostly maiden be Amara? Was she seeking retribution? Ngozi's world had become a battleground, one where wealth was no longer a blessing but a curse that threatened to swallow her whole. The necklace, the source of her power, her rise in status, was now a symbol of her torment. Despite the eerie whispers, the ghostly apparitions, and the relentless pull of the crimson beads, Ngozi refused to confront the truth. Denial was her shield, and she wore it like an armor. Every time the shadows crept closer, every time the whispers grew louder, she pushed them away, telling herself it was just her imagination, the stress of her newfound life playing tricks on her. She tried to ignore the feeling that something was watching her, that something was waiting. But the moment she touched the necklace, it was like the world shifted. The cool, comforting weight of the beads against her neck seemed to pulse with an unnerving energy. She could almost feel the maiden's sorrow, like a presence hovering over her, waiting for something. But what? What did it want from her? Ngozi shook the thought away, trying to focus on the day ahead. It had been 2 weeks since the strange occurrences began. 2 weeks of sleepless nights, of waking up to the soft, mournful whispers that seemed to come from nowhere, of feeling as though the very walls of her home were closing in. She couldn't keep ignoring it any longer. The servants had begun whispering among themselves. The air had grown thick, and even her trusted assistant, Ifeoma, had noticed her changing demeanor. "I noticed something strange, ma'am," Ifeoma said one afternoon, as she stood in the doorway of Ngozi's office, her expression cautious. "You haven't been yourself lately. You look tired, distracted. Is everything all right?" Ngozi forced a smile, smoothing her hair back as she sat behind her grand mahogany desk. She had come to rely on Ifeoma more than anyone else. Her loyalty was unshaken, and her presence was a comfort amidst the turmoil. But even Ifeoma was beginning to notice something was wrong. "Don't worry about me, Ifeoma," Ngozi replied, her voice sharp, yet trying to remain calm. "It's just the stress of everything going so well. You know how it is. I've been working too hard, that's all. Ifeoma gave her a look, one that said she wasn't entirely convinced. If you say so, ma'am. But Ngozi could see the doubt in her eyes, and that made her uneasy. For the first time, she felt the weight of her actions, of everything she had acquired through the necklace, her wealth, her power, her fame. All of it seemed fragile, as though it was built on a foundation of sand. She pushed those thoughts aside. She couldn't let herself succumb to fear. Not now, not when she had everything she had ever wanted. The necklace would give her even more. She was sure of it. She just had to ignore the voices and focus on her business, on her empire. As the days passed, the tension in her home continued to build. At night, the whispers grew louder, more persistent. She would lie in her bed, her body frozen with fear, as the faint sound of crying echoed from the corners of her room. The ghostly maiden's presence was undeniable, but Ngozi refused to acknowledge it. One night, unable to sleep, she found herself walking through her grand mansion, her mind restless. She passed the walls covered in intricate artwork, the floors that gleamed under the soft glow of the chandeliers. Everything was perfect, but it felt like a cage. The walls, the mirrors, the very air in the house, everything seemed to close in on her. Her footsteps echoed in the silence, too loud, too heavy. She stopped in front of the large mirror in the hallway. Her reflection looked back at her, but it didn't feel like her. It felt like a stranger wearing her face, someone she didn't recognize. She took a step closer, her breath shallow as she examined the mirror. The air around her grew thick, and for a split second, she could have sworn her reflection twitched, like a shadow moving just behind her reach. She blinked, but it was gone. Her heart raced, and she turned away, refusing to acknowledge what she had seen. But that night, as she lay in her bed, the whispers returned, louder than ever. This time, they were clearer, more insistent. She could hear the words, even though they were only murmurs at first. "You must give back what you have taken." Ngozi clutched the necklace, tighter, the beads cold against her skin. Her breath caught in her throat as the temperature in the room dropped, and the shadows seemed to stretch and twist unnaturally. The whispers grew louder, now a chorus of voices all chanting the same thing. "Return it! Return it!" She closed her eyes, willing it to stop, but the pressure on her chest increased, as though invisible hands were pressing down on her, choking her breath. The necklace felt like it was tightening around her neck. She reached up to pull it off, but her hands trembled and the clasp wouldn't budge. She gasped for air. Her heart raced, but nothing she did could make the pressure lift. "Please! Please!" she whispered, her voice breaking. "What do you want from me?" The whispers faded into silence, but the pressure on her chest remained. The temperature in the room returned to normal, and the shadows seemed to settle back into their corners. She was left alone in the darkness, gasping for breath, but she was no longer sure if she could trust her own mind. The next morning, Ngozi stood before the mirror once again, but this time she was different. Her eyes were hollow, her skin pale, as though the vents of the night had drained the life from her. She tried to smile, but the smile felt forced, unnatural. Ifeoma noticed immediately when she entered the room. "Ma'am, you don't look well," she said, her voice filled with concern. "Is everything okay? You haven't been yourself lately." "I'm fine, Ifeoma," Ngozi snapped, too quickly. Her fingers brushed against the crimson beads, and the ghostly whisper seemed to echo through her mind once again. She flinched, the unease building inside her. She could no longer deny that something was wrong, but she wouldn't give up, not yet. "Get me more jewelry," Ngozi ordered, her voice cold and determined. "I need something new, something beautiful. I need more." Ifeoma hesitated, but nodded. She knew better than to argue when Ngozi had that look in her eyes. "Yes, ma'am," right away. But as Ngozi watched her assistant leave the room, the unease continued to gnaw at her. She didn't know what was happening, but the necklace, this cursed thing, was dragging her deeper into its grip. She was trapped, but she couldn't let go. Not yet, not until she had everything. As the days went on, the pressure increased. The whispers were no longer just voices, they were physical sensations, like invisible hands tugging at her soul. She could feel the weight of the necklace, heavier now, suffocating her. The ghostly presence was always there, watching, waiting. Ngozi's desperation grew. She began to look for answers, seeking out spiritualists and witch doctors, hoping they could rid her of the curse. But every ritual failed. Every attempt to break the bond only made it stronger. The more she fought it, the more the curse clung to her, like a vice tightening around her chest. The more she sought to hold onto her wealth, the more she lost herself. Her once vibrant energy was fading, replaced by a hollow emptiness. Her beauty, her confidence, her empire, all of it was slipping away. But she couldn't let go. She wouldn't. The ghostly maiden was always with her now, a constant shadow in her mind. A reminder that there was a price to be paid for the riches that came with the crimson beads. Ngozi's eyes grew darker with each passing day, her face gaunt, her hair falling from its once perfect style. She was no longer the confident, poised woman she once was. She was being consumed, and she knew it. But she wouldn't surrender, not yet. She couldn't. Would she give in to the demands of the ghostly maiden? Would she ever find a way to break free from the curse? Or was she doomed to face the consequences of her greed and denial? Find out in the part 2 and concluding part of this story coming soon. Thanks for watching. Please do remember to like and subscribe and hit the notification bell for more contents like this. And let me know your thoughts in the comment section. Bye.